Welcome to Iraqi Dinar Update, your go-to source for the latest news, expert insights, and real-time developments on Iraq's currency, economy, and financial reforms. Whether you're a long-time investor or just curious about the dinar, you're in the right place. The ongoing issue of unpaid salaries in Iraq, particularly concerning the Kurdish Regional Government, KRG, has increasingly become a flashpoint not only for internal Iraqi politics but also for the broader regional and international dynamics in which the United States plays a pivotal role. At the center of this issue is the fact that for months at a time, government employees in Iraq, and especially within the semi-autonomous Kurdish region, often go without being paid. This chronic failure to deliver salaries on time has had serious repercussions for public trust in governance, the livelihoods of citizens, and the long-term stability of the region. It is not just an economic or administrative failure but a political one, and Washington is highly aware of its implications. The U.S., recognizing the strategic significance of the KRG within the broader Iraqi framework, has reportedly been pushing Baghdad to immediately release the necessary funds to cover these delayed salaries. For Washington, the issue is not merely one of financial logistics. It is about maintaining a fragile but critical equilibrium in Iraq, especially in the north where the Kurdish region plays a vital role in stabilizing the country. The KRG is a longtime U.S. partner in the fight against terrorism, a critical player in energy politics, and a buffer against external influences, especially from Iran and Turkey. As such, the U.S. views the financial neglect of the region by Baghdad not only as unjust but also as strategically dangerous. To understand why this is such a serious concern, one must consider the historical, political, and economic context in which these salary delays occur. The KRG has historically had tense relations with Baghdad over a range of issues including oil revenue sharing, budget allocations, border control, and political autonomy. Despite being part of Iraq constitutionally, the Kurdish region often behaves and is treated like a quasi-independent state, with its own military force, the Peshmerga, visa requirements, and trade policies. While this autonomy has allowed the Kurds to flourish in many ways, it has also left them vulnerable when relations with the central government sour. One of the most contentious issues is the federal budget. Baghdad is supposed to allocate a percentage of the national budget to the KRG, previously 17%, though it has fluctuated with political shifts. In return, the KRG is expected to send a certain amount of oil to Baghdad for export through the State Organization for Marketing of Oil, SOMO. But disputes over oil production and sales, legal jurisdiction, and transparency have led to repeated budget crises. The central government often uses the budget as a tool to exert pressure on Erbil, the capital of the KRG, sometimes withholding salaries and funds altogether when political disputes escalate. It's also worth mentioning that delays in salary payments do not just affect government employees, they disrupt the entire regional economy. When people stop getting paid, they stop spending money. This affects local shops, private schools, housing markets, transportation services, and virtually every sector of the economy. In a place like Kurdistan, where private sector development is still heavily dependent on public sector cash flow, the impact is even more severe. Economic stagnation begins to set in, leading to higher unemployment, emigration of talent, and increased poverty. Furthermore, the delays send a negative message to foreign investors. No international company wants to invest in a region where the government cannot even pay its own workers. It undermines confidence in the rule of law, in financial transparency, and in the overall business environment. This is critical at a time when both Baghdad and Erbil are actively trying to court foreign investment to rebuild infrastructure, develop natural resources, and diversify their economies. In some cases, public protests and strikes have erupted in response to the salary delays. Teachers refusing to show up at schools, health workers staging sit-ins at clinics, and street demonstrations have become familiar scenes. While the KRG has tried to mitigate some of this by paying partial salaries or issuing IOUs, these are at best stopgap measures that fail to address the root problem, the political dysfunction between Erbil and Baghdad, and the broader financial mismanagement plaguing Iraq. That is why the United States, understanding the fragility of the current moment, is placing increasing diplomatic pressure on Iraq's federal government. Ensuring that the Kurdish population receives its rightful share of the national budget is more than just a gesture of goodwill, it's a strategic imperative. In the larger scheme, Washington's push for immediate payment to the KRG is a small but critical move in the chessboard of Middle Eastern politics, a way to prevent one of its few remaining allies in Iraq from sliding into economic desperation and political disillusionment. At the same time, the U.S. must walk a fine line. Too much pressure could backfire, leading Iraqi leaders to accuse Washington of interfering in domestic affairs. Too little, and the KRG may interpret it as abandonment. Diplomacy in this context requires not only urgency but finesse. The Biden administration, as well as lawmakers on Capitol Hill, are acutely aware of this tightrope. Multiple congressional delegations have visited Iraq in recent months, and top officials from both sides continue to engage in behind-the-scenes negotiations aimed at resolving this impasse. Ultimately, the unpaid salaries are a symptom of a much larger disease: the lack of political cohesion in Iraq, the dysfunction of its federal system, and the absence of a reliable mechanism for managing disputes between its various components. Unless these deeper issues are addressed through constitutional reform, improved revenue-sharing frameworks, and increased financial transparency, the same crisis will repeat itself again and again. And yet, for the ordinary Kurdish schoolteacher who hasn't received a paycheck in 3 months, or the nurse whose family is slipping into poverty despite working full-time, none of this geopolitical analysis matters. What matters is putting food on the table, sending kids to school, paying the rent, and living with dignity. That's the tragedy of it all, a failure of governance at the highest levels cascading down to ruin lives at the most basic level. So when people say it's unbelievable that Iraqis, especially those in Kurdistan, go unpaid for months at a time, they are right. It is unbelievable. It's a human rights issue, an economic failure, a political blunder, and a national security risk all wrapped into one. And unless the powers in Baghdad, with pressure and support from allies like the United States, make this a priority, the cost of inaction will be far greater than any budgetary shortfall. It will be measured not in dollars, but in lost faith, broken communities, and a weakened Iraq. Thanks for tuning in to Iraqi Dinar Update. If you found this content helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a beat on Iraq's evolving financial landscape. Stay informed, and stay ready.